Welcome back to Analysis, where we've been talking about female genital mutilation and efforts to fight the practice in the UK. Well, for this part of the programme, we're joined on the line by Amanda Kirch, who's Communications Coordinator at World Vision Somalia. But before we go to Amanda, Sheikh, it was suggested by one of our interviewees at the end of the last section that the government ought to be doing a bit more than just writing to schools. What do you think?
I think I agree with that. I think the government needs to initiate education initiatives for the teachers and for other workers within our communities and leaders within our communities. And if there are cases where underage female are being coerced to undergo this kind of surgery, should be prohibited. It should be reported, and whoever is doing that, they should be prosecuted, in my opinion. But I would like to also add that FGM, from an Islamic perspective, is completely prohibited. It's unanimous. All of the scholars from the UK and outside will prohibit FGM. But what I wanted to emphasize in the last section is that there is a distinction. We have in the UK, in Europe, in America, increasing number of women going under the knife for cosmetic purposes, whether it be for beautification or sexual enhancement. This is not called female circumcision. They have another jazzy technical name for it. So there is from an Islamic perspective, there is a allowance there. But FGM is completely prohibited. Girls who are under the age of 18 and adults who are over the age of 18 who are being forced to carry out these surgeries, completely prohibited. And we need to work with the governments, local authorities to tackle this issue, I think.
Dr. Shafi, you've made the same points as the Sheikh here. You've both made it very clear. We've discussed the fact that this isn't a specifically a Muslim issue. Would you welcome greater interfaith intervention in this, or do you think that's already taking place?
I think we would certainly welcome that. It's taking place, but not at a sort of level that we would perhaps like to, and I think we want to discuss more and more openly about it. But I just wanted to make a point to reiterate or reinforce this thing about, I think this should be regarded, especially in the underage children, as a child safeguarding issue, and all the rules and requirements and obligations that are imposed on or are expected on individuals who come across a practice of against safeguarding children or child abuse should actually be emphasized to the individuals. I'm talking about, yes, teachers. I'm talking about healthcare professionals who in the course of their action may come across this practice, and therefore the reporting of that should also be made, should be encouraged or made compulsory. So there are different ways in which the law can actually make sure that there is not only this awareness, but also things that can be done to improve and improve this situation by reporting. And I'd like to again reiterate that apart from what the Sheikh has said about people wanting to get done, I think it's important also to make sure that we do not mix this up when individuals who've had the misfortune of having had the female genital mutilation done in earlier years, when they go for repair or for correction, that should be regarded as a separate thing, because that is actually a service to the community, to the people who have actually been victims of it.
Okay, let me bring in Amanda Kirch now from World Vision Somalia. How do you see this issue? Because it must be very different from the debate that we're having in the UK.
Thank you very much. In Somalia, it is a different case. We are talking of virtually all girls undergoing female genital mutilation, about 98% of young girls and women having gone through that. Now, the other challenge is that the government is not felt at all levels of the community. So the source of authority amongst community members, particularly the rural community members, then becomes an alternative, which mainly is religious leaders and cultural leaders who dictate what happens to members of the society as well as forms of punishment for those who do not adhere to social norms. Now, you are aware that there's a substantial population of British people of Somali origin in the UK, and the practice of FGM is high amongst them. It has been said that these people fly out the children to places like Somalia and other places where they can effectively carry out these practice. And I mean, I've been to Somalia, different places in Somalia, and seen young girls who have suffered FGM consequences. For example, things like health problems, infections in their private parts, fistula, where girls are not able to control fecal matter as well as urine. And it is absolutely devastating. So there needs to come a situation where the government speaks out by way of enforcing law and enacting policies that will protect these young girls from undergoing FGM.
So do you think that when you say the government should act, do you mean in Somalia or do you mean here in Britain or both? And to the extent that you mean Somalia, that's going to be a difficult process to get going, isn't it?
I think all countries should effectively put in laws and enforce those laws. But apart from law, there needs to be information awareness, as the Sheikh has noted in the program, as well as creating the appetite for these cultural practices to be phased out. For instance, World Vision has enacted some programs in some places of Somalia where the religious leaders have been involved to define what is acceptable within Islam. And the general message from the sheikhs is that FGM is prohibited and it is haram within Islam. However, they have unanimously said as well that a form of circumcision, which is called sunnah, is permitted. And this is only permitted, again, by choice. It's not a must for a young girl to undergo sunnah. It is a choice. And so all this should come together to help eradicate FGM amongst young girls.
Mm. Sheikh, do you think how big a role can education in the various communities, like the Somali community, in this country play in shifting the general balance of argument, do you think?
I think for me, in the Muslim community, is very, very important. If imams and scholars from the Muslim community and leaders from the Muslim community speak out against and raise the awareness amongst the Muslim community about FGM, then people look up to them, people will listen to them, and people will understand that there is a problem within our society, not just the Muslim community, but within our society. So I think speaking out, imams, community leaders, health workers, social workers, teachers, together in a unified manner, I think it will have a very, very deep impact within our community.
Mm. Hilary, you were saying that this is a very lucrative business, isn't it?
Yeah, at lots and lots of levels. I've been trying to do some research on this, and at every level from community to global. Just take you very quickly through. Yeah, obviously, we know that cutters, as they're called, or mutilators, get paid. For some of them, it's the most prestigious and most highly paid thing they could do. They don't want to be goat farmers instead, because it's nothing like the same. You can understand that from an economic point of view, though not perhaps from others. The whole process, in some places, not in all, is very expensive. A whole harvest can be used to produce the celebrations to do with this. Bride price is a critical part of family economies in places where there's no pension. You raise your girls. I mean, this is horrible to say, but you raise your girls. You make them fit for marriage, which means that they have been mutilated, and you sell them, essentially, from father to husband. If you can't do that, then you've lost your investment in... I hate to talk like this, but that's how it is. Mm. And there is no pension. Your daughter and her husband are going to be your pension. Mm. So that's... And then you look at the local economy. Either you have very ill women who've had terrible things done to them, who can't contribute properly. Maybe they can't look after their own children may die because of that, or else you spend a lot of money trying to make them better again, as of course you should. That's money that could be spent on malaria or lots of other illnesses. You go through the big organisations fighting FGM, absolutely as they should, don't come cheap. The UN has to spend a lot of money on it. The opportunity costs in economic terms of having to attend to a totally unnecessary procedure are huge. Well, I've started to add it up. It's horrible.
Just let me put that point to Amanda, because Amanda, I mean, the way this debate is framed, certainly in this country, is predominantly in kind of human rights, in the rights of the women, and correctly. But what Hillary's talking about is a kind of economic underpinning which is going on around this, and that probably should be brought more into the debate, shouldn't it? Because it speaks to how difficult it's going to be to eradicate.
Thank you very much. In Somalia, there are two things involved. Primarily, it's been based on religion. And number two, the Qatars, as you say, they make money out of this. I met several recently, and they say that they have done this for ages, and it brings them the income they need to feed their families. However, even if we say that we are going to advocate that the Qatars stop doing it, what alternatives are we giving them? And the mothers of these children who look for these Qatars, it's not the Qatars going to look for the girls. It is the mothers of the girls who look for these Qatars. What are we going to give them as an alternative to protect their girls against the dignity that they supposedly would lose if they are left open? And essentially, the fact that they might not get married if they are not passed through FGM. So we need to make sure that all these groups that contribute to the genital mutilation of young girls are targeted with alternatives and the right message. Going back to the religious front, it's very clear that the religious leaders do not condone FGM. But as I said, there is the Sunnah form of circumcision that is allowed within Islam. It is not very clear to the Qatars as to what are the details of Sunnah. So that needs to come out clearly within the Qatars that, number one, it is optional within Islam. And number two, what exactly should happen within Sunnah circumcision. So that would help quite a lot in terms of moving forward. And to me, it is the conversation, breaking the silence, that is the beginning of all this. If the religious leaders start to talk out openly, and the other moral authority leaders within the society, then the conversation will move forward to what do we do next. And so it needs to come out in the open because essentially it's still an under-the-table discussion. I mean, nobody's willing to speak out quite openly, except for the places that World Vision has managed to involve the religious leaders to come out openly and talk about FGM and its harmful consequences to young girls.
Dr. Shafi, do you think that the government is doing enough to contact communities about this? I mean, all right, they wrote to the schools and fair enough, but do you think that's A, enough, or B, the most effective way?
I think for a practice like this, whatever one does is not enough if it is going to be continued, and that is what that's what we know. It is continuing. So I think we need a multi-pronged approach. In terms of religious leaders and community organizations, I can just tell you that the Muslim Council of Britain, in association with Forward, which is a very trust organization, NGO, that deals with these issues, and with the Muslim Spiritual Care Provision, which is a spiritual care in the NHS department, we've just about completed a leaflet which is due to be launched in the next couple of weeks, and that has three main messages. One is that it is not an Islamic requirement, and I think that has got to be very clearly put out. I'll be a bit worried if we send mixed messages about what it is. There is very, very clear guidance as far as we have been given by the scholars we have consulted that it is not a Islamic requirement. And that needs to be clearly made up. And that it's a cultural practice and not a religious requirement. That's one thing. The other thing we need to know is that it is not good for the well-being, the health of our women who are sisters, daughters, wives, and mothers. And that practice needs to be stopped. That is the other message we've got to give. The third message is that it is illegal in this country, and therefore people will be prosecuted, will face consequences. That's got to be clearly mentioned. And also be told that you can't just take children away from the UK and have it practiced somewhere else and come back, because even that is unlawful in this country. And those are the messages that need to be given, together with the fact that a number of countries where this is a cultural practice have now made it illegal in their own countries, and the number of such countries is growing by the day. All these messages, what the community can give, but I think the government and the officials need to collaborate with and work with the communities, because this is a united cause we all need to further.
Okay. Sheikh, do you think that Michael Gove is the best man to be delivering this message? Because both there are many teachers who intensely dislike the Education Secretary. He's just appointed the former head of counter-terrorism to investigate 25 Birmingham schools. No matter how correct the message might be, if people don't like the messenger, maybe they're less inclined to listen, do you think?
I think in this case, you're probably right. I think Michael Gove, in my opinion, is not the best person really to tell teachers what to do and what not to do. And I think many teachers, fortunately, have come out and said that. So I think that there has to be a comprehensive look towards this issue. I think teachers have a role to play, the government has a role to play, but the government needs to give guidelines and put certain people in place who the community trust, and the teachers and the profession would trust. And I think also, coming back to what Dr. Shuja mentioned, I think I agree with the Muslim Council of Britain and the leaflet that they produced, and we need to do more, really. It's not enough. We need to do more to tackle this problem. But I also, again, emphasize that the Muslim Council of Britain and Dr. Shuja, they're not making a distinction here. And I am very, very confident that the scholars they consulted, they do also make that distinction. And yes, we have to condemn FGM, but there has to be a nuanced, comprehensive outlook to this issue, which Amanda mentioned.
Hilary, what do you reckon? Do you reckon that are you worried that a perfectly good message may not travel as far as it might because of the messenger?
That could happen, but in a way I think that people will think despite that, because, I mean, teachers are generally speaking, very good people. They really care. What they are demanding, and I think they are absolutely right, and it's come out in some of the conferences recently, is what I said before. They need a clear and simple pathway. You just pick up the phone on this number and you tell somebody. They have a similar system in France, by the way, and that person makes the decision about how far it's going to do. You're not telling tales. You are legally required in the system that I would like to see to report. Beyond that, somebody who is much more competent than you
are you now
make the
legally
decision.
Required to do that?
No, you're not. You could find yourself up against a professional counsel for failing to report, and you should report. And I can produce endless documents that tell you as a teacher or a nurse that you have to, or a doctor. But it's not actually mandatory reporting yet. We absolutely have to have mandatory reporting very soon indeed, and that has to be something that is then taken out of your hands. You've just done your job. You've reported it. And if, say, 2 or 3 other people are saying the same, then this is really serious. If it's just a niggle, then maybe somebody will say, well, we'll keep a watching eye. You shouldn't have to make the decision as the classroom teacher. You should just be absolutely required for any kind of child abuse, not FGM alone, to report it. And then somebody who is very much better trained than you probably are to evaluate the situation would take responsibility for it. And that is what we're missing. The government is passing the buck. That's what makes me angry. Not that you know, it's Michael Gove doing the message. He's done what we told him in the end. Let's see a bit of taking responsibility, not passing the buck. Now it's been done.
And what do you think? Just explain for us why you think they're passing the buck. Who are they passing it to?
Well, they're passing it to people that instead of the government saying, yes, we've told you what you've got to do. You do have to keep an eye out now. But they should then be saying it's mandatory. You have to report it, whatever sort of child abuse it is. Because this is just cheap child abuse like any other sort when it comes to it. There's nothing special about FGM. It's just a particularly cruel form of child abuse. And then from that...
And a kind of institutionalised one.
Well, you know, let's just call it for what it is. It's child abuse. You know, it's gendered child abuse. And from that, we need a system whereby somebody who is trained, which would be somebody like a guardian ad litem type person, will take on the responsibility for deciding how to deal with the case once it's been reported. There may be no action. It may be... Yeah, we understand your concern, but we don't think that it's valid at the moment. But it's likely that there is some reason for concern. Somebody who was trained is to take that on, not a classroom teacher. The classroom teacher doesn't want to go into the classroom the next day and, oh, mistold on so-and-so. We don't want that. We need somebody to take responsibility. Only the government can provide that responsibility.
Okay. Amanda, if you had to say to the government now, do something else, what would that something else be?
Besides strengthening the law, I would urge the British government to engage in dialogue, first of all, to determine what the issue is, because as it is, there's still a conversation as to what constitutes a violation of the rights of the child in those circumstances. As the Sheikh has noted, and the scholars, the Muslim scholars that we have worked with, there is a clear difference between FGM and circumcision. So that conversation needs to be factored into the law, as well as including the education system, especially the teachers. There needs to be deliberate inclusion of health workers, because most of these women who have undergone FGM end up in the health systems. And there are some health consequences that haunt these women for a long time. So that conversation needs to go.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you there because we are running out of time now. I mean, one thing that we should say is that the NSPCA is one place that you can go if you feel that there's an issue that you'd like to report. And for the rest of it, I'd like to thank my guests here in the studio and you at home for watching. Please tune in again for future discussions. And don't forget, you can keep up with the discussion by following us on Twitter at the address below, or by following the Islam Channel Current Affairs team on Facebook. Until next time, thank you and good night.